The Elementary Structures of Kinship, originally published in 1949, is a foundative text in anthropology and philosophy. This text explores the complex relationship between nature and culture, particularly through the lens of kinship systems and the prohibition of incest. His analysis profoundly influences how we understand social structures, marriage rules, and the role of culture in shaping human behavior. The opening chapter argues against the notion that culture is merely a superficial layer imposed on human life. Instead, he posits that culture is deeply intertwined with the fundamental aspects of human existence. He suggests that human beings cannot retreat to a pre-cultural state, as culture is an intrinsic part of what it means to be human. While it might seem that the absence of rules could serve as a clear distinction between nature and culture, the author challenges this idea. He points out that both nature and culture exhibit constancy and regularity, blurring the lines between them. In this context, the text introduces a critical distinction: the normative character of culture versus the universal character of nature. While norms belong to the realm of culture, universality is a characteristic of nature. However, there is no straightforward mechanism to articulate or bridge the gap between nature and culture. A central thesis of the work is the assertion that the prohibition of incest is not merely a cultural rule, but is culture itself. The prohibition of incest, a near-universal taboo, is a fundamental cultural institution that ensures the dominance of culture over nature. Lev-Strauss explores various intellectual explanations for the prohibition of incest, categorizing them into three main types. The first type of explanation attempts to maintain the dual character of the prohibition by distinguishing between nature and culture. According to this view, the prohibition of incest serves to protect society from the perceived dangers of consanguineous marriages, where close relatives marry. However, the text dismisses this explanation, citing scientific evidence that suggests there is no significant hereditary disadvantage to such marriages. This perspective views culture as a societal solution to the problems posed by nature, but Lev-Strauss finds it lacking in depth. The second type of explanation eliminates the concept of culture altogether, arguing that the prohibition of incest is rooted in a natural instinct. According to this view, humans have an innate aversion to incestuous relationships. The book critiques this explanation, noting that if the aversion were truly instinctive, there would be no need for a prohibition. The very existence of a social rule against incest indicates that it is not merely an instinct, but a cultural norm, albeit one with universal applicability. The third type of explanation dispenses with the concept of nature, viewing the prohibition of incest as a purely social construct. In this view, the prohibition is linked to totemism and is seen as a remnant of the exogamy rule, which dictates that individuals must marry outside their social group or clan. The author acknowledges that while historical explanations might provide some insight, they do not fully address the underlying reasons for the prohibition of incest. He finds this type of explanation vague and insufficient in capturing the broader significance of the incest taboo. The real issue is not about tracing the historical origins of specific incest prohibitions. in particular societies, but rather understanding the universal need for societies to regulate sexual relationships. This perspective shifts the focus from a diachronic, historical, to a synchronic contemporary analysis of the problem. The prohibition of incest represents a crucial juncture where nature and culture intersect. It is the one rule that simultaneously belongs to both realms, ensuring that culture can assert its authority over nature. Without this prohibition, culture would not fully emerge, and nature would remain dominant. However, with the prohibition in place, culture takes precedence, and nature ceases to exist as an independent force. The third chapter of the Elementary Structures of Kinship delves deeper into the implications of the incest prohibition, particularly in terms of its role in transforming biological relationships into social alliances. The prohibition of incest, he argues, marks the transition from the natural fact of consanguinity, or blood relations, to the cultural fact of covenant, or socially recognized alliances. While culture acknowledges the inevitability of biological inheritance, it asserts its own rights in the realm of social organization, particularly in the establishment of marriage rules. While nature imposes certain biological imperatives, such as the need for reproduction, it does not dictate the specific modalities of relationships between the sexes. Culture, on the other hand, intervenes to replace the randomness of natural alliances with organized social structures. In this sense, culture is not merely a passive recipient of natural forces, but an active agent that imposes order and regulation. The foundation of social alliances lies in the principle of reciprocity, the necessary balance between giving and receiving. Marriage, in this context, is not only an erotic union, but also an economic transaction, deeply intertwined with the division of labor between the sexes. The text introduces the idea that women are a scarce resource within societies, and their distribution requires collective intervention. This scarcity is not solely due to polygamy, where one man might marry multiple women, but also because desirable women are always in limited supply, leading to competition and tension. Thus, the regulation of marriage is essential for maintaining social harmony and ensuring that women are distributed fairly among men. This economic dimension of marriage highlights the broader social importance of the institution, beyond mere personal or romantic considerations. The prohibition of incest, therefore, is not just a rule about who one can or cannot marry. It is a fundamental cultural mechanism that transforms biological relationships into social alliances. By imposing rules on whom one can marry, culture ensures that marriage serves the broader social good, rather than merely satisfying individual desires. This transformation from nature to culture is what the text sees as the essence of human society, the moment when nature's random forces are harnessed and organized through cultural norms and institutions.